this is how they engage when they go to TikTok. This Gen Z, Gen Alpha, this is the kind of content they're looking for.
Right.
They share it with me and I'm like, I don't get it.
Right.
I'm like, this is so bizarre, but it's right for that consumer. And it's that level of depth of understanding that's really creating a connection.
Good for you guys that you're willing to do it, but then at the same time, like how
I
do
mean,
you
there's a risk
how do
of
you do
not
that?
doing it. It's always interesting to look at it both ways, right? Thanks for having me.
Super happy to have Justin Parnell, who's the SVP of Marketing and Insights and Analytics at Mondelēz. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
So I'd love to just get a little bit of an understanding of what does analytics look like for a giant corporation with so many legacy brands that sit underneath of it. Like, what does that actually mean? Is it consumer data and you're sort of mining that data on a daily basis? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, for a consumer packaged goods company, really understanding our consumer and our shopper is at the heart of everything that we do. So, one of our primary roles is to really understand what are the consumer's needs, what are the core occasions, how do we fit those needs, what's changing, how are their preferences changing, so we can best meet their needs in the future. So that's a big part of our role.
Yeah.
We also have an analytics team as well that kind of provides more business intelligence around what's actually driving our business, in terms of
like market factors,
sort of forecasting kind of the category and how the market's going to change and evolve. And then making sure that we're building tools, like we've been here at the Brand Summit today talking about AI, leveraging, more advanced analytics and predictive tools that help us actually better kind of have more foresight in terms of shifts that we're going to see with the consumer or the market.
I guess that's a good thing to dig into, which is how is the consumer shifting?
Yeah. Well, this year we've seen some significant shifts in shopper behavior. We've had years of high inflation in this country, and we've really seen all that inflation. You've seen food prices rise, and you've seen that really impact now consumer behavior.
Yeah.
Particularly in Mondelēz is a global snacking company.
Yeah.
Right. One of those leaders of snacking in the U.S. And snacking is an impulse category. It's not an essential category. Right. It's a dessert. It's a treat. It's a delight. So it's not a necessity. And so you see often those are where consumers cut back. Actually, we've done pretty well, given sort of that behavior, but we've definitely seen the impact of inflation kind of impacting their shopping decisions and snacking choices. So that's been a big shift. Of course, we continue to see the shift into digital channels in terms of more of our sales are coming from digital commerce.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Like people buying online, doing click and collect.
Okay.
So where they're ordering online, picking up at the store,
Yeah.
delivery. So those all those modalities are growing, and you're seeing that has impacts because it's not like standing in front of a shelf with
absolutely
300 SKUs,
I'm hungry
right?
and I want to grab
You're searching for I want crackers,
right?
And you might see a few options. So you've got to make sure we have to, as brands, have to make sure we're showing up in the best way to drive our market share. So we're seeing that as another big shift, and in general, what we're seeing is people are shopping more in channels like value, so like dollar stores, and more in convenience. So they're buying smaller packs and shopping more frequently, and a lot of it has to do with limited budgets.
So the cost coefficient has shifted because of the inflationary impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still, consumers still desire brands. Like we have leading brands like Oreo, Sour Patch Kids, Cliff Bar. They still want the brand name largely, right? But I think what it means for us is we have to make sure we've got the right type of product in literally the right pack at the right price in the right place. So that becomes very, of course we do a lot of work around being relevant in culture and making sure we're showing up in the right ways and we're building our brands, which is all really important. But what's critical is that we have the price, we have the pack at the right price point that consumers can afford today.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to ask you another consumer trend, which I'm sure you're probably sick of answering, which is the shift of GLP-1s and people sort of like rethinking their health, rethinking how they're snacking. How has that impacted a company like Mondelēz, and how are you thinking about like what the consumer desires are going to be in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
We're constantly monitoring sort of where the consumer is going and understanding what do we think is going to stick and be a true like need that we need to fulfill with our brands and what may not be, and we don't have a crystal ball, but I think we're pretty good at predicting these things. I mean, one example would be gluten-free. And we've had an enormous amount of success with launching Oreo gluten-free, Tate's gluten-free, Chips Ahoy. And we really saw that that's bigger than just a celiac population.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really a broader consumer need that was happening around the avoidance of gluten. So
for sure.
That's just an example I give of like, we're always looking, and it's this kind of like, okay, how big do we think this will be? What's really the broader need? Who's the target? That kind of thing.
Right. And then how do you adjust, I guess, assuming it's going to be a big trend and you sort of
Absolutely.
said, yes, we're leaning into this.
You lean in, you go with one brand, it's working, you learn how to scale it, that kind of thing. And so I use this as an example. You asked so specifically about GLP-1. We're keeping our eye closely on GLP-1. What I would tell you is I don't think it's had a major impact on our categories. I think consumers continuing to snack. You find in general, I think regardless of GLP-1, we're seeing a lot of growth in more portion packs, which are more kind of like individual consumption packs versus these, I mean, we still sell a lot of like the family size, party size share packs, but you're seeing more growth in that space, which for some consumers, that's portion control. So you see that, and that could be a behavior we see emerge as a part of GLP-1. But people are not going to stop snacking, and they're not going to stop picking their favorite brands.
For sure.
And so, of course, we're going to continue to keep a close eye on it. But I would say it has not had.
Yeah. It's interesting audience of one here, but there's been a lot of, I live in a very busy street in Brooklyn, and I have a friend who lives on the equivalent street in LA, and both of us have seen like this just boom in sweet shops and bakeries.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think that it must be something to do with the fact that if people are going to indulge, they want to indulge in the right way.
Absolutely.
And they don't want to, so they're maybe they're going to, not eat as much, but they're going to eat that, cookie or candy or whatever it might be. Have you guys sort of seen that?
Absolutely, you see that. It's kind of, we say it's like mindful snacking, but when I snack, I want
what I want.
The full indulgence.
Right.
I want the full, whatever if it's a decadent experience, if it's a sweet experience, you want that. And you do see it more broadly, right? I was actually at the Museum of Ice Cream this weekend with my daughter for her birthday. But even that's just one example. Like there is this kind of like love of sweets and treats, and people want to indulge. And also it's a moment, our brands play in moments of connection with consumers, right? Like a lot of times when you're eating these types of treats, whether it's an ice cream or dunking Oreos in milk or even enjoying a candy bar or candy, sour candy, you're doing it in a social environment with other people. So it's often a part of a bigger occasion that has more of an emotional connection.
Yeah.
And you don't want to compromise in those moments.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point. Like how people use food to bring them together. And I'm sure that's what you see in your research all the time.
Absolutely.
And sort of like, how do you kind of think about the consumer and what their needs are and the connections that they're creating and how they're using food through those connections? I mean, obviously we're about to go into the holiday season.
Yeah. Crackers and charcuterie.
Right.
And cookies and, building, gingerbread houses with graham crackers, like all that is a huge, the real underlying need is about emotional connection, social connection.
Sure.
So it's a huge driver for many of our brands. You kind of see snacking. You see there's some brands that clearly play in more like kind of functional nutrition.
Yeah.
Or we think it's almost like
a
fuel
Cliff
for your
Bar.
body, like a Belvita or a Cliff Bar. Exactly. That those play more of like a sustenance, kind of role. But a lot of the snacks that we choose are for enjoyment and connection with others.
How are you thinking about today's consumer, younger consumer? So obviously we talk a lot about Gen Zs, but their how they behave, how they snack, and also how they how you interact with them in a digital environment, because I think it's different than like the millennial generation before. And I want to call it like a couple of examples. Nutter Butter on TikTok,
Yes.
and that's just been, or Duolingo on TikTok. There's been these brands that are kind of having this weird trend, and this like, the weirder the better. Quirky, bizarre. How are you guys thinking about that when it relates to
Nutter
your
Butter's our
marketing strategy?
brand, so we're very proud of Nutter Butter.
Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning it. No, I think it was, and that's an example. We Mondelēz and our brands in the U.S. are leaders on social media across the board and within snacking. And I'm really proud of that because we've taken a leadership stance across platforms, and the way we've done that is we've built a really strong team, both internally and with agency partners. Our brands are very attuned to how you build brands through social media.
Sure.
And they understand the consumer and how they behave and what they're looking for across platforms. And I think it's that level of consumer understanding of really, okay, this is how they engage when they go to TikTok. And this is how this specific cohort, this Gen Z, Gen Alpha, this is the kind of content they're looking for.
Right.
And going really deep. And they share it with me, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Right.
I'm like, this is so bizarre. But it's right for that consumer. And it's that level of depth of understanding that's really creating a connection. And so I do believe, I think it's all about the people that we have on it. And we've also kind of given freedom within a framework to say, like, guys, go explore. It's at the end of the day, like, I mean, there's some area we have to be careful on social media. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot you can do and experiment in a way that you can, manage risk in social media. That's not like putting, a video campaign out on YouTube or something. So I think that's an area of like where, you really go deep in the insight on the platform and the consumer on that platform, and then like kind of. You
let people play.
Have some bravery, like kind of explore.
But that was going to be my question to you, is like, how do you find that's risky. So how do you have the risk appetite to do that? And is that just part of the company culture that's woven in like throughout? Because there's a lot of companies that are smaller with far, far less risk appetite.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, good for you guys that you're willing to do it, but then at the same time, like how do you?
There's a risk of not doing it. It's always interesting to look at it both ways, right? Because, like, you look at like our Sour Patch Kids, Oreo, they're in the top brands across industries among Gen Alpha and Gen Z. The reason that they are is how they connect with those consumers in culture on the platforms. I mean, if you look at SPK, they've done brilliant work in gaming, to connect with that. That younger consumer. Oreo's just got like a constant flow of like kind of culture of engaging ideas. I honestly think if there's a bigger risk of relevancy if you don't do it. So yes, you accept the risk that I'm gonna put my neck out there and do some things that might feel a little bit uncomfortable. But yeah, I would say there is a tolerance for that because we believe that it helps grow our brands and build relevance. And I don't think anything we've done is like so out there from a risk. I mean, from my perspective, it's a little wacky, but you're like, okay, what's the worst thing? Okay, it's not going to work.
Sure.
We pull it down. It's nothing. I don't think there's anything ultra controversial.
Yes, of course.
It is wacky, but and we're very careful too when we put things out there that there's no bias or undertone we don't intend to to be there, that kind of thing. So we do scrutinize quite a bit.
But I think that it's a testament to the fact that this must be woven into the corporate culture, because I have thought so many times where I've come up with a fun idea or something crazy, and then you have to go and you have to sit in a boardroom and you have to present it to like a CFO, and and it's like, it kind of almost sucks. It can suck the fun out of it. But it doesn't seem like that's.
No, and I think there's, particularly with social media, I mean, I didn't approve the Nutter Butter social media campaign, right? Like, I mean, I truly do trust. There's a process, and we have people that are really experienced on the brands and definitely on that brand and, across the board that we trust. At a certain level, if you're doing a campaign that, could be have some potential controversy or we're signing up a very well-known influencer or something, like then of course it's elevated, we review it. But I think there's a lot of trust in our system. Like I think we've put in place the right governance and processes. We've got the right people at the table that are looking at risk management in terms of, consumer government affairs and legal, and they're reviewing what goes out into the world, with our brand teams. And the brand teams know when they need to elevate, but they do have autonomy and freedom.
That's cool.
And I think that it is really cool because I think, and it also,
it's rare too.
What's cool, but I think it's because it's social. Like you should, and brands should have more, push more in social, on social platforms.
Yeah.
And that's also often where you learn and experiment, and you can actually uncover maybe bigger brand ideas there.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, you can throw spaghetti at the wall in a way that you can't across in other places. So
absolutely.
I guess, one question I wanted to ask you is, you sort of oversee insights, you oversee analytics. Have there been, or is there a time in your career when you had an insight and you were like, you know what, this is really risky, but I'm going to run with it, or I'm going to take it to the top and I'm going to see what people think? Like, can you think of
the insight's never. The insight's not risky ever. It's typically how you want to activate against it, right?
Right.
So, one of the ones my first role as a brand manager was at Kraft Foods, and it was on Miracle Whip, and we did a lot of work on like how do we need to be disruptive. We need to turn this kind of staid brand around. Been declining in share, lost relevancy, and you dig into that core consumer and who they are. They are so passionate about Miracle Whip, but it is a very polarizing taste.
Totally.
It is like you either love it or hate it.
Mm-hmm.
You would and they would even talk about how they felt ostracized, like when they would marry a mayo lover, or you know what I mean? Like they were kind of judged for their loving Miracle Whip, and then they just like stopped fighting for it, and that's why we were losing consumers. So this is really interesting. I'm like, okay, there's a real like debate here about mayo versus Miracle Whip. I was like, mayo's sort of winning in this debate, and like, how do you reignite this passion? So that's the insight, right? Now we went after it and we said, we're gonna have we launched a campaign where we literally had, and it said celebrities in it, everything, where they took a side. You either love it or hate it, and they would confess their love or hate for the brand. And so, that's cool. That's risky.
Yeah, it's absolutely risky.
And so you don't know how that's going to land, right? But the idea was, can we, even if you've never tried it, like, because there's a lot of people that hadn't even tried it, that already judged it. Yeah. How do we get them to sort of, pique their curiosity to try it? So that's an area where it's like, like this could backfire. Sure. If I have people talking about how much they hate my brand. Right. So a lot of times it's in how you want to, but yeah, I guess that's the point. The risk is in terms of how do you activate on the insight. And most often it's a balance between, it's always risk and reward. Yeah. Right. That's what you're looking at, right? But you're saying like, what is the breakthrough potential? Mm-hmm. And how do we do research on it to understand like, how do we really believe consumers are going to respond? Mm-hmm. And then how do I manage the risks if there's risks to it?
That makes sense. I would love to switch gears and ask you a little bit more on like your career side. You've been at Mondelēz for 18 years.
Yeah. Kraft and Mondelēz, which became Mondelēz. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What would you tell your 22-year-old self who was just getting out of college and if you were looking back, like what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell myself to relax, chill out, like it's going to be okay.
Yes.
I found myself to be very anxious in the early days of the career. Like I had to be perfect. I put a lot of, pressure on myself to make sure I was making the right career choices and decisions. And I think it's all going to work out. Yeah. Like, I think that's a piece of advice. And I tell, more junior marketers this too, when they get overly worried about, am I getting promoted fast enough? Or,
or do I need to take this job or this job? And it's like, it doesn't really matter.
And the other thing I'd say is things come to you at the right moment when you're open. Yeah. And trust the people around you to help guide you, and trust your instincts too. And it rarely has failed me when I've done that. Yeah. When I feel like I've been like very stubborn in like what I am like have to do, or this has to happen in a certain way, it's more of a struggle versus if I kind of just say, okay, I'm going to do my best work. I'm going to lean into the advice of my mentors. I'm I would say to myself, network.
Yeah.
Like, get to know a lot of people. The one to discover about what you really want to do, but also that's how opportunities come your way.
Right.
Is through relationships.
And I think back to your point about being too structured or too rigid, anytime that I've been too structured or rigid has been when I haven't been open to networking or meeting people or being taken down a different pathway that I didn't see.
Absolutely.
And I think if I'm with you, relax. It's all going to work out. It's going to be fine. It doesn't really matter whether you take this job or this job or this,
and honestly,
in the macro.
Like, it's easier when you're younger. Like,
Yes.
how bad could it get? Right? Like,
That's right.
like
You think
you
that
go try something out, doesn't work out, you do something else.
You think the decisions are so impactful, but the truth is, you're right. You can pivot so easily then.
Especially younger in your career.
Absolutely. Yeah. I did also want to ask you a little bit about obviously you've been at Mondelēz for 18 years. Like, if you wanted to leave a legacy behind, if you wanted people to say like, oh yeah, Justin was this type of a leader, what would you want people to say about you?
What's that thing that people say? People don't remember what you say, but
how you made them feel.
How you make them feel. Yeah. I really believe that. So I want to be a leader that really cares about the people that work on my teams, and that kind of takes care of them and helps them grow and develop. I mean, that's really important to me, because I think those, when I look back on the people that I feel have left a huge legacy and have had a huge impact on my life, they're the people that really invested in me. They gave me great advice and guidance. And that comes down to the fact that they just cared.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that's, of course, I would deliver great business results, build wonderful brands. That's good, but I think it's really sort of how I've helped people grow and develop in their careers.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I once was told, sort of to the point of, it doesn't matter what you did, but how you made people feel. I was once told, you can either be right or you can be successful, but you can't be both. And I think about that a lot, where it's, it's how people feel. It's how you make them, like, do you make people feel warm and happy, or do you make them feel bad? And do you make them I think about that a lot when I'm in meetings, and I'm like, do I have to be right about this, or do I need to address how this person is feeling in this moment instead?
Right.
And so I think that that's definitely something that I've learned as well as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very.
I'm going to leave you with one last question.
Okay.
We are moving into 2025, and I'd love to just get your thoughts on something that you're excited about in the next 12 months.
Well, I was just talking about AI
at
the summit today, so I'm excited about, I think, just AI, but really just how much opportunity there is to utilize data in a responsible and ethical way, but that helps really grow our business and benefit consumers. Because I'm starting to see that across the board, where we're leaning into AI to help us understand how consumers' needs and preferences are changing, which is exciting as a marketer, because that means we're predicting, we're seeing where the kinds of solutions we need to bring to consumers. I think the benefits of having more personalized content. It's annoying for a consumer to get content all the time being bombarded that's not relevant to them. So how do we, in a responsible way, that's an area that we're really focused on, make sure that we're, continuing to move the needle and providing consumers better experiences.
Right.
So, and then from an analytics standpoint, I think it unlocks our ability to get much sharper in terms of where the consumer, shopper, and retailer is going.
Yeah.
So I think so I just get excited about the whole space that we're
AI
seeing.
space.
It's like why we're having this conversation
today.
And it's across the board, and I'm seeing it across operations, supply chain, sales. It's touching all aspects of our business, and it's transformative. So I think that's very exciting.
Do you have a favorite AI tool that you use?
I'm not a huge, I use ChatGPT only for personal reasons
Yeah.
because we can't use it for business
Okay,
reasons.
got it, got it.
So, we have tools that we're building internally, we're already using internally
Great.
that are fantastic, that help us get to quicker insights with
That's
the
great.
use of AI.
I use it for personal reasons for like, hey, I need a recipe for 10 people for this weekend.
Yeah.
It's a holiday party, and then I'll like put in all my specifics, and then it'll kick out the restaurant in the neighborhood that I want, or a recipe.
Use ChatGPT?
Yeah, for all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I go to Burning Man every year, and we have 200 people in our camp. So I was like, and last year we had over-ordered so much food that we just had like hundreds of pounds of like beef left over at the end. I was like, guys, we need to use ChatGPT, put in 200 people, make a meal.
Tell you exactly
Hopefully
what
it
you
doesn't
need.
put like have rocks into the recipe. But like, yeah, that type of stuff I think is like, it's on a personal level is fun too.
Oh, super useful.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed it.